In this second unit of the third module, titled Utilization of ChatGPT for Early Childhood Years Drama Creation, based on the source analysis that we made in module 2, we shall look at how to utilize ChatGPT to this end. As you can see here, I have first signed up. Okay, there are two types of subscription. One subscription is with payment, it allows a few more functionalities than the simple subscription. It also, there is one free subscription, which is actually good enough for the purpose of what we are generating here. If you are a first-time user, I suggest that you sign up with a free option initially, or log in if you already have an account. By signing in with an account, ChatGPT saves the project's history. Here I will insert the project name and it will save it in the project's history in a profiles interface, thereby helping one save time in similar future projects. So I'm opening a new project and I'm titling, I'm giving it an appropriate title, historical source dramatization. We create a new project, and then we need to ask ChatGPT to help us create a dramatization of a historical source for children of a specific preschool education age group. For example, for children aged 5 to 6 or children aged 3 to 4, indicating that we will provide a set of instructions to this end. What are the set of instructions? Here I have also included the responses to these instructions in order for us to save time here so that we do not spend time typing the. So one basic question that we need to provide clues to ChatGPT is the type of historical source. To respond, in other words, to respond to the question, what is the historical source I wish to dramatize? This could be a document, an event, a historical figure, something else. And here on the basis of the source that we analyzed in the course of the second module of this massive online open course, I wrote this response, an act of the Guild of Tailors of Vorskopoye dated circa 1745, containing decisions regarding the testing fees of candidates for certifications as masters. The second question is the text of the source available for analysis? And there we paste the text. Okay, this is the text that we analyzed. So going back to ChatGPT, we can ask it, can you please generate a short drama for children in their preschool education, in preschool education cycle, aged 5 to 6, in line with a source I will supply. The reason that why I have used this please is that there are studies that demonstrate that because big language models like ChatGPT, large language models, simulate attitudes of human beings when we use a gentle language, then they respond better to what we require. So beyond, that clue, I should also, write that I will provide set of, these are called prompts, a set of instructions on or to this end. And then you will see that it engages in a dialogue. Okay, please go ahead and share the source and your set of instructions. Okay, so there we start generating the content. These questions are good enough for us to have figured out, what the responses would be in advance, so that we can paste the entire text of instructions. So here is the source that we would like ChatGPT to help us generate a short drama. We ought also to indicate the purpose of the dramatization and respond to this question: what do you hope to achieve with this dramatization? For example, education, entertainment, etc. Some of the prompts that you may put in ChatGPT are precisely the elements. What do you need in order, to develop this drama? Okay, so you may not necessarily utilize the same prompts, but produce your own. You may experiment with that. So in my response to this question, I'm providing this prompt. Please link this dramatization with the competency areas on 1. Culture, 2. Chronology, continuity and change of the pre-education curriculum in the Republic of Albania. These are particular references to the curriculum of preschool education in Albania. And the reason why I'm putting that is that ChatGPT may generate drama, but drama is not necessarily tied to the particular curricular requirements of a country. So the more details you give how ChatGPT ought to link the drama with particular curricular requirements, the better the results will be, the results that you will get. So I'm giving it the following commands as well. In particular, please develop it so that it tackles the following elements of the curriculum. 1. Description of thematic areas, culture. Children are able to discern the role of culture in shaping lives and societies, make judgments based on their knowledge of culture and cultural diversity. And 2, chronology. By studying the past and its heritage, children come to understand key historical concepts such as chronology, change and continuity, and cause and effect relationships. I'm also providing the following prompts, to the drama to be generated, to address the need to foster these skills. When it comes to the thematic area of culture, we wish that the child recognizes the most apparent cultural differences within a social group. In this particular case, to be able to recognize the differences between the societal group that generated the historical source that we provided above and, our modern life today. And in the thematic area of chronology, we would like children to foster an ability to identify events in particular chronological order. When it comes to values and attitudes, in the thematic area of culture, we would like the child to engage in an activity that would help it express feelings and emotions about the past, to express likes and dislikes, depending on the situation or context being discussed. And with regards to the thematic area of chronology, we hope that the child will cultivate skills to demonstrate curiosity about places and the people who live in them, as well as showing interest in others, their ideas, their customs, and their interests. With regards to the knowledge basis for the first thematic area, culture, the child is hoped to engage in activities that will enable it to recognize, discuss, and understand life in a particular communities and their similarities and differences with others. And when it comes to chronology, we also would like ChatGPT to generate an activity that would help children, would enable, empower children to recognize, discuss, and understand societal interdependence. Another clue that we ought to fit ChatGPT with is whether there is a key message that we wish to convey. And on the basis of the analysis of the historical source that we made, that we did in the second module of this massive open online course, we command ChatGPT. In this particular case, I want children to experience the historical source and discover social hierarchy and issues, such issues like inequality. Then we ought to provide ChatGPT details with regards to the audience, the target group. So what is our target group? And my response, let's say, to this question for a prompt is that our target group is a third level of preschool education, that is children aged 5 to 6. Another question that relates to the target groups, are there any specific needs for the audience? For example, teachers know best that sometimes, depending on the setting, children of a particular age group in a pre-school education setting may be more advanced than their peers or the curricular expectations of the Ministry of Education, or less advanced. Okay, so we ought to provide such particularities to ChatGPT. In this particular case, I commanded ChatGPT to produce also an alternative plan so that we can integrate in an inclusive classroom 3 children with disabilities, 1 deaf-mute child, 1 on the autism spectrum, and 1 with gross motor impairments. We provide ChatGPT a clue on the duration of this exercise. How long would we like the dramatization to last? In the case of historical sources, I would not advise any activities that go beyond 20 minutes of time, because the attention span towards the end of the exercise lowers, and thereby imparting our ability to reinforce the activity by generating a discussion after the dramatization takes effect. We ought to provide clues with regards to the format of the drama that is to be generated. If we are looking for a classical drama, a modern interpretation, or something else, or a combination thereof. In this particular case, I'm asking for something suitable for the particular age group, that is something simple. And we ought to also specify what type of dramatic text narration we would prefer, a theatrical performance, a dramatic reading, or an interactive scene. In this particular case, I selected a theatrical performance. Other data that are necessary for ChatGPT to generate an appropriate narrative dramatization is the number of participants. And here I'm providing, as you can see in the response in the question, how many actors or participants can be included in the dramatization. I'm providing the number of the group. I have already mentioned before a group of students with special needs, with disabilities. And I'm also mentioning here that 4 out of the group of 15 are talented pupils, are talented children. Then we ought to provide if there are any roles that should be primary or secondary. And there we need, on the basis of the historical source, to provide ChatGPT with clues on the roles. Alternatively, you may wish to ask ChatGPT, to suggest roles. So in this particular case, in the source that we analyzed in the previous module, we ought to generate roles for the guild's leadership, the testers, the examiners, as well as the apprentices, from master painters' fathers and from non-painter fathers. We could provide additional clues. Yes, there might be some others who are simply witnesses of the examination procedure. But because we do not want to produce a very complex dramatization in this particular case, I thought of keeping it relatively simple. Then we ought to provide some historical and cultural context. So a question that may address that is which historical period is the event set? And they're providing here, the date of the source, that is 1745. And then we ought to ask whether there are any cultural linguistic elements that should be highlighted or should be avoided. And in this particular case, taking into account that this is an activity aimed at for the third age group of preschool education children, children aged 5 or 6 years of age, my prompt here is to use simple language, but also slightly old-fashioned, if this is possible. Then we ought to provide other clues. For example, if we do have the resources available to put any other materials or ideas into the dramatization, we ought to specify them. For example, if we have the resources, to have a costume or music or particular staging. In this particular case, for the sake of this MOOC, of this massive online open course, I suggested no. And I suggest, the answer that you ought to give in your first attempts with producing historical-based dramatizations. With regards to language and style, okay, in which language should the dramatization be? Although in my initial experiments in the context of module number 2 and the dramatization that we had the experience to look in the form of videos, this was produced in Albanian, the local language. In this particular case, I'm commanding ChatGPT to use simple but slightly archaic English language. And to the prompt question, whether we prefer a formal, simple, or artistic style, I suggest that we initially keep it simple. I'm now to copy all these clues or these prompts. Prompts are commands that we, information commands, clues that we give to ChatGPT so that it takes these into consideration for the purpose of, so here we copy that and we place it in ChatGPT. We press, this arrow, and we shall see, let's say, what ChatGPT generates. It is important for us, to know that for whatever reason, the role of the teacher is, in this particular case, to critique the results that ChatGPT generates. And we have the possibility, if we see any flaws in what is produced, for example, here, it takes into consideration that the participants are 15 children, including 3 with disabilities. I would like, let's say, to ChatGPT to take into consideration that participants also include not only 3 children with disabilities, but also 4 talented children. So I could actually, give it a new prompt. Please take into consideration that the participants include not only 3 children with disabilities, but also 4 particularly talented children. So it will regenerate what it generated before, and now it has taken into consideration the prompt that we provided. So that's a response below is a revised and enriched version of the preschool drama, now incorporated roles that actively include 3 children with disabilities and 4 particularly talented children. Okay, And this is the result. Title, The Day of the Guild Test, a story from the past about fairness and skill. Age group, 5 to 6 years. Duration, 15 to 20 minutes. Participants, 15 children, including 3 children with disabilities and 4 talented children. Characters and casting suggestion. Narrator. Function guides the story. Child profile match, talented child. A child that is characterized by strong memory and an expressive voice. A guild master, an authority figure, fair-minded, a talented child as well. Guild assistant, energetic and helpful, talented child, it suggests. Examiner 1, give simple tasks. It is suggested here that we include the child within the spectrum of autism. Okay. A scene breakdown. Okay. I will copy paste. It gives, let's say, instructions. The narrator reads closing words while others do. So these are, it also includes the wording of what could be used. For example, the talent child as narrator adds a short reflective rhyme. Why such coins for such one name, for just one name? Aren't our stitches just the same? Okay, this is a poem, let's say, to help students develop empathy with regards to the conditions of inequality when it comes to fee testing. Having demonstrated that, I will include the result into the resources of this particular second module, second unit of module 3, so that we have the opportunity to look into the results that ChatGPT generated.